Hi, Jen.
Hello, Tonya. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
Alrighty, so I guess we'll get started. I do have some questions that I wrote down, just kind of general. Um, so first, I wanted to ask really what got you interested in body language and that kind of being I guess, the psychology behind it, and if you went and studied for it and everything.
What got me started in nonverbal communication was a class I took in psychology where the psychology professor just kept getting closer and closer to my personal space to see if he can intimidate me, and it worked. He did. There is
Yeah.
definitely a science behind it. We know that nonverbals come because they're primal to us, right? So if you think about what we experienced before we had words, we only had nonverbals. So it's much easier for us to look at someone and read their nonverbals than it is for us to look at them, read their nonverbals, listen to their words, and then determine if the two are congruent. So we know nonverbal is the one that people will automatically believe and trust. So that's the wonderful thing about learning to read nonverbal. You can always tell if someone is trying to be deceptive or if they're being genuine.
All right. That's pretty cool. All right, and then 'cause we were talking about how online dating is a big thing and
Right.
really just kind of normal nowadays. So I guess when you're meeting somebody for the first time, what are, I guess, three things that we usually first recognize about somebody?
Three things that we first recognize. Usually, the first thing we would recognize would be their posture. How are they standing? How are they walking? Are they walking tall? Do they feel confident? Do they look confident? Do they hold eye contact? Do they smile at you?
Alrighty.
You know, in order to form relationships with people, in order to have that bond, in order to be the yes, so to speak, you have to know how to flirt with someone. And that goes both ways. Men need to know the flirting signals that they should be sending out, and women need to know the flirting signals that will work for them. And, you know, we know with women, one of the most important things to do is hold eye contact and to smile. But in addition to that, it's the little subtle things like maybe tilting your head a little bit so that that looks as if you're looking down, and that brings out the paternal instinct in a man. In addition to that, touching someone. If we touch somebody, we form a connection automatically. So I always say to people, when you're going out on that first date, you know, you smile at them, you make eye contact, you nod and tilt your head to encourage their conversation, and then you lean over gently and you just maybe touch their hand during a conversational piece. And then eventually you get to the point in the date where now you want to reciprocate, so you start touching yourself. Maybe you stroke your neck, because what you're doing when you do that is saying to the person, hey, I'm interested in you, right? That's one of those cues that we know is an intention cue of interest. So the wonderful thing about Caress Forever collection is that when you touch yourself, you release this fragrance that stays in the air for about 12 hours. And with just by doing that, what you're doing is ingratiating yourself to that person, and you're also sending out that signal. So you're touching them to form the emotional connection, you touch yourself to show interest, and then on top of that, the scent is going to stay around for so long that what's going to happen is it's going to form a memory, and they're not going to be able to forget you.
Oh, okay. Well, that actually covers one of my other questions. Well, whenever me and my husband first started dating, there was something he always did that I noticed. When we would hold hands, he would always play with my rings, and he would try to tickle my palm. And
Right.
I kind of thought it was a flirtatious thing, but is there anything deeper to that? Because I've heard things about somebody playing with your hands. There's a sexual
Well, yeah,
kind of reference
there's an
to that.
innuendo there, but it's also a playful thing because when you think about the hands, you're tactile, right? This is what is very intimate. So when you have a tactile communication, when you touch someone, whether it's in their hands or their arm, what you're doing is telling them that you're interested in them. So that little rubbing of the fingers, maybe playing with the rings, that's an intimate gesture that says, I want to get to know you better. I'm interested in you, and I'm not afraid to demonstrate that.
Okay. Um, Also, too, like when we lay down, he always has to be on my right side, but if we're sitting on the couch or we're walking, he's always on the left. I've noticed that even if we're sleeping on the couch or something, he changes his position to the right side of my body. Is there something behind that?
Well, typically when you're walking outdoors, the man will walk on the side of the street. So that would probably be why he would be on the left, because men typically take the protective role. So they'll stand on that side so that if anything happens, they're the ones that take the hit.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah,
That's really interesting. Okay, so I've got one more question,
sure.
and this one kind of just in general, but what are, I guess, 3 things that you could pay attention to that really indicate somebody is being dishonest.
Being dishonest, that's a really tough thing to generalize, but I'll give you some things that will indicate that somebody is feeling anxious. Okay, so you want to baseline someone when you're looking for dishonesty, and you baseline them by looking for honesty cues. So if you and I are having a conversation and you know that I typically answer in 25 words, and now you ask me a question and I only answer in 3 words, that's a red flag, right? If I typically look up to my left when you ask me a question because I'm trying to visualize what you're saying, and I'm trying to visualize my answer, and now I look up to the right, that's a red flag because I'm using a different side of the brain in order to get the answer. And then the last thing is, when we get really anxious or nervous, we tend to touch our face. That's a really bad thing to do. So if you've ever heard the story of Pinocchio, right? His nose grows when he lies. Well, that's actually true. When we're being deceptive or when we feel anxious, our nose tends to grow a little bit. These little follicles on our nose grow, and that makes us itchy, so we tend to touch our face more. So those are 3 cues you can look for. But again, you can't go with lying. All you could do at that point is look at the context of the situation and then determine if it's anxiety or maybe you need to delve a little further into the question.
Okay, wow. That's really, I've never heard that before.
There's a lot of
great.
information. And if you want some more tips, you can just go visit houseofcaress.com, and there's a whole list of them.
Alrighty. And what was that website?
houseofcaress.com.
All right. Well, I guess that's our 5 minutes. We went a little over, but I want to say thank you very, very much.
Thank you.